And welcome back to the Podcaster Nation, everybody. And I say welcome back because I know you were just listening to one other episode of ours and you wanted to come back for some more stuff. We have more. Don't worry, we got a lot more. This is the podcast that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. And my guest today is a podcaster. You figured it out. You cracked the code. Folks, this is the place where we all come together and we lift each other up. If you are not a member of our private group on Facebook, The Podcaster Nation, please jump in and join it. It is free. Anybody who has a podcast is welcome, and we'd love to see you in there. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get going. We have a fantastic guest with us today, here to talk about leadership, some things that are sorely missing in today's world. And I am really looking forward to getting to know this guy better. Please welcome to the show the host of the Leadership Conversation podcast, Derrick Ivory. How you doing, Derrick?
Good, man. Feeling great. Any day above ground is good.
That's about as positive as you can get right there. I love it. That's beautiful.
Oh
Derrick,
yeah.
tell everybody about the Leadership Conversation podcast. What is it? What made you start it? What's your purpose for doing it? So on and so forth.
Cool. All right. So the Leadership Conversation podcast is a podcast that I started essentially when I was getting out of the military. I struggled for a little bit to find what how would you say your um, specific area was that you really liked. For me, it just so happened to be leadership. My degree is in leadership. I've been in leadership for a long time in the military. Just recently retired a few days ago as a 24 years service. Um, and once I got into the podcast, what I do is I like to talk to people about leadership. I don't necessarily tell people what they should or shouldn't do or claim to be the best leader or anything like that. Um, but I talk to all people from all walks of life. Even though I'm military, my guest list is heavily um, either people that are active duty army or military or prior service. But it doesn't have to be. I have a few people on there from the civilian world that do things like doctors and lawyers and people that work in the tech industry. So to sum it all up, I just like talking about leadership, giving leadership advice, and I ask specific things that they like books about leadership and quotes.
I
But that's
see.
about it.
That's great. We need that. The purpose of the podcast then is it to bring education? Is it to bring awareness? Is it to help other people become better leaders? Kind of what's the focus?
So the focus is to bring awareness. It is to educate people on different leadership because you never know who's listening, and someone might say, "Oh, well, I went through that when I was a leader," right? Um, it's about helping people become better and no matter what your career field is, who you are, leadership in your home as a father, as a husband. Yeah, it's just about making helping people get better from a leadership standpoint.
Nice. So it's about leading in your life.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so you got to this because you were looking for your niche, trying to find your subject in life, right?
Mhm.
Leadership is where you decide upon. What made you choose podcasting as opposed to any other medium you could be doing?
I think it was a way for me to actually talk to people. My wife will tell you, I talk to people all the time. Random person at the grocery store, we're having a full-blown conversation while she's over there looking at the apples and the oranges. And then she'll come back and she's like, "Hey, where do you know that guy from?" I was like, "I don't." She's like, "You just have random conversations with people that you don't know." And my response is like, "Well, if I don't know a person, how can I get to know them if I don't talk to them?" Right? So I never had a problem with talking to people. But I I did want to get into the aspect of leadership by, talking to people and making sure that I spread that positive word about leadership. Some people had good experience, some people had bad experiences, but I got into it by just wanting to know more about it.
So your fondness and your attraction to leadership in general, was that something that came about while you were in the military because of the military, or were you feeling some of that before you got into the armed services?
Most definitely, leadership has been something that I've been passionate about for a while, but I just didn't know. I've always been attracted to strong leaders, to strong leadership styles. There was one particular story, and I share this with listeners all the time, where I didn't show up for work when, there was time to do things, and I didn't show up for work. And I had this one supervisor who would call me, and I would tell him everything. I was like, "Oh, I'm sick. Oh, something happened. I'm telling you, I killed my grandmother on my mom's side twice." He's like, "Man, I thought your grandma died a couple months ago." And I was like, "Oh, that's my other grandmother, right?"
Ouch.
And then one day he called me and he says, "Hey man, are you coming in?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I have to like do whatever." I had some excuse. And he was like, "What's the real reason why you're not coming in?" And it was a moment of vulnerability for him and me. So I told him essentially, "Look, I don't come to work because I don't do anything. You know, my job in the military is mechanic, but you guys have me doing things like sweeping and mopping and helping out other sections. I actually know how to fix things." And he said, "Hey, come in. I got something for you." I said, "Cool." He brought me in. And once he brought me in, he had me to do things like inventory toolboxes. I think I pulled like a service on a trailer. Then I replaced like a starter on a Humvee. And he says, "Man, you're like an actual mechanic." I'm like, "Yeah, like I know how to fix things." He apologized for not giving me the opportunity. That started into me coming in more. And this is the Army Reserve, by the way. So that started it for me to come in more. I was coming in a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time. And then he eventually asked me to put in an application to do something called AGR, which is Active Guard Reserve. Um, and when I got accepted, I told him that I appreciated him for his help, and he told me, "Hey man, just do the same thing for somebody else that I did for you." And that's something that has really stuck with me for a long time. And I think that's where my leadership come from, is how I approach leadership. I just make sure that I try to take care of the people that I am in charge of. Because one day they're going to be in charge of somebody too. And you want to continue that positive trend.
You're talking about legacy right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's
Definitely
great.
a legacy.
And paying it forward, which is another concept that has become foreign to most people, I think, at this
Oh
point.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's great.
just showing appreciation, consideration of the people that you're leading, appreciation for the people that got you to where you are. A lot of times, even in like the civilian world and business, or in the military, one of my things that I hate the most is when someone gets promoted and they act like they've never been the rank previous to their promotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You know,
they forgot where
so
they
that
came from.
yeah, exactly. And you can't relate to somebody. If you're here and the other person is here, it's hard for you to relate to them.
Nice. Sounds like there's a lot of firsthand knowledge in what you're doing. So is this how you run your personal life too, in terms of, trying to lead?
It is. So I try to lead every day in every situation exactly the same. Of course, there's different details that need to be changed. Like, in the military, some people they respond to, I don't know, aggression. You can tell them what to do, but I can't come home and say, "Hey," to my wife, "Hey, I need you to like cook me a meal today." That won't go over so well.
No.
But some of the core principles that I like is just leading with compassion and love, and also being something what they call a servant leader. You know, you're a leader that's leading to serve. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, I do that with my kids. I'm always trying to teach them about certain situations. I have a son who's actually in the military himself. He's in Colorado. His choice, not mine. I have a daughter who's in school for biomed, and my wife, who I met in the military, and my two younger kids. I always try to lead with compassion. I always try to teach them things. I try to turn everything into a life lesson. And when I tell my wife this all the time, I says, any man that wants to teach you something is the man that loves you. That's trust me. And I was like, I do love you.
Well, that's a great line right there. I hope everybody's listening to that, because that's deep. That means a lot in terms of
Mhm.
family. So, did you
Oh
come up
yeah.
with that, or did you hear that from somebody else?
I just something that I feel that it's impassionate. I feel like if someone wants to teach you something, then they love you.
That's
Same
great.
thing with my son. You teach your son how to change a tire, how to check the oil in the car, you know, whatever the case is.
That's great. I like that. Earlier, if I can swing back to it, you said that you've always been attracted to strong leaders. And that was
Hmm.
one of the things. I'm guessing that you have a few leaders in mind. Who are some of the leaders that you looked up to that kind of helped lead you down this path?
Oh yeah. So I have my first unit that I was in, it was a guy named Jay Reed, Master Sergeant Jay Reed. He's retired now. He was the one that gave me the opportunity to prove myself as a mechanic. Then I have another guy, his name is Anthony Morgan. He's a really good leader. Uh, I had he's a full board colonel now in North Carolina. His name is Clay Powell. He's really, really good guy. Just a bunch of leaders. I had one lady who was called my military mom. Her name is Marcia. She's still in my life as a leader. And my mother really instilled some good leadership traits in me, you know. So just off the top
Nice,
of my head, those are some people that I can think of as being good leaders.
nice, very nice. Just give me an example of how one of these people sort of all really impacted your life. Not the guy from the motor pool because you told me that one already, but
Hmm.
one of these other leaders because you threw out some intriguing names, and I know there's some military personnel in there, and you got your mom, which is also cool, and
Yeah.
military mom. So, what's one way one of these people kind of influenced your life that sort of helped lead you to where you are now?
I think I'll go to my mom on this one. So my mom was, as you said, military parent. She was in the Navy, I believe. She learned a lot of things in the Navy. I was her firstborn son. She kind of raised me for the first 5 or 6 years by myself. She brought me up in an environment where she was just tough enough and just compassionate enough to have me to become the person that I am today. A lot of my work ethic I learned from her. She was always a hard worker. She would try to teach me things. She would try to tell me about, how to be like not so emotional, because she was really big on saying that if a man is super emotional, he's like a very dangerous man, you know. She said that I had to learn how to control my emotions, how to control my anger. She realized I had a lot of anger from missing father presence.
Ah,
But yeah, but my mom, like I said, a really hard worker. She got out of the Navy, and then she had a job as a prison guard, and then she left from being a prison guard to a police officer, then from a police officer to a desk job with the police department, and then she did things in between, like she worked for Frito-Lay, and she had these factory jobs and plant jobs, and now she does records for Mississippi Department of Rehabilitation Services, and she's been doing that for the past, I want to say, 7 or 8 years. She's ready to retire, and we speak 3 or 4 times a week, and
nice.
we talk often. So she always tells me things about how I am as a father and how I was as a kid, and to be more understanding and empathetic of, the things that my kids go through. Yep, your mom would say, "You were the same way when you were a baby, Derrick." Like, I got you. I didn't ask you, mom.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's nice.
my mom is a great leader, man. She is.
Yeah, she doesn't sound like somebody you want to mess with.
No, man, she's definitely tough. She raised 3 boys on her own, no girl. And me and my wife have this conversation often. But my wife is Dominican. She's Hispanic. She's very traditional, right? She doesn't do things like take out the trash, which I don't mind because I'll take it out. She doesn't fix things. She's like, "Oh, that's a man's job." And we had this altercation earlier in our marriage. We've been married for 16 years. I had this altercation earlier in our marriage where she would say things to me like, "Oh, well, why won't you let me cook food?" And I was like, "Listen, my mom raised 3 boys. I know how to change out an engine and I know how to fold laundry." I said, "You're getting the best of both worlds, baby." I was like, "If you're sick, I can take care of you." I said, "Trust me, I got you."
But
Yeah.
she's very traditional, so she didn't like that very much.
Yeah. So I had to back off some, do some things, let her cook more, do things that she's happy with. She likes cooking, she likes cleaning. And besides, when I clean up, it's never to her standard anyway. So,
I see.
yeah.
I see. So there's a lot of high standards, military type stuff going on in your life. Seems to be a kind
Yeah.
of a theme.
Yeah, most definitely. I met my wife in the military.
Okay,
Yeah.
good deal.
Yeah.
Where'd
We
you
were
meet her?
both Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Oh, Okay.
I think it's called Fort Eisenhower now. The name of it, the new name, it changed about a year and a half ago. It's called Fort Eisenhower, but we met in Fort Gordon, Georgia.
So was she in the military too, or was she just staying down there and you met her when you were down there?
She was in the military. Yeah. So and after that assignment, she got out because she realized that I was getting promoted and we wanted to be together. Uh, the military separated us for about a year and a half. They wouldn't station us together for some reason.
Oh, jeez.
And she just said, "Hey, I love you and I want to be with you. Do you think I should get out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll stay in, you get out." And it's been a good ride ever since then, man. Hopefully it lasts forever.
You said 16 years marriage.
Hmm.
Congratulations on that. That's another rare feat in today's world. So
Hey, man.
that's awesome. It
Thank you.
really is. Well, yeah. So the military thing is just run rampant through your entire DNA chain now, up and down,
Yeah,
and your
pretty
kids have no
much.
hope. You can,
Yeah.
so I know you said it was your son's choice to go in the military, but he didn't really have a choice, did he?
Yeah, he had a choice. He wanted to go to the Air Force initially, which I encouraged because I love the Army, but I really do feel like the Air Force's jobs are a lot easier, you know. For instance, there's some things on the technical side as well. A lot of people don't know this, but in the Air Force, when you go to Air Force schools, their schools convert to college credits for most of the classes that you have.
Oh, wow.
However, on the Army side, it doesn't necessarily work like that. You may go to a hazmat class, but the hazmat class, if you want to use it outside of the military, once you get out, it doesn't transfer, too well.
Oh, wow.
So it's good training and it gets you experience, but it doesn't transition too well as far as like college credits or something that you want to pursue, And since my son he works with computers, he fixes computers in the military and the army. I always encourage him to go to school for something like computer science or computer engineering. So that way, when he does get out, he'll have his experience and his education. He could just move forward with his life.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I thought maybe when you first said that about the Air Force that it was some good-natured, brotherhood, like, jab at the Air Force from an Army guy.
Yeah, no. No, I
Okay.
got a bunch of friends that were in the Air Force. No jabs.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Now you're too disciplined for that. I can tell.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay. So you're doing the podcast on leadership. You completed season one,
Mhm.
and you said there was 8 episodes to season one.
Yeah, it's about 8 or 9.
Okay. And you just started your second season.
Yes.
Um, what'd you learn from season one that's going to help you in season two as a podcaster?
You know, I think on the technical side, what I've learned is, put yourself out there more. Talk to more people, have conversations. Um, I've learned on a personal side is that you cannot wait for support. Sometimes you just have to do things. It's crazy because you have people that have known you for the longest time, but they won't share your post or comment on it or like it. But you'll see people all the time wishing a celebrity who has no idea who they are happy birthday, things like that.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it doesn't bother me, but I tell my wife all the time that I'm just gonna do it, you know. So I did learn that. I learned the content creation, making sure that I have but making sure that I schedule a time better. I do my podcast from the house through an app called Riverside,
Mhm.
and Riverside is really cool. But what I've noticed is that most of my free time is on the weekends, so I would have to send my family away or go buy them like movie tickets or something like that.
Right.
Until recently, I found the podcast studio that was closer to here, so I plan on recording some of my episodes in the podcast studio. I paid $100 an hour, and it comes as like an editing and all that. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Nice. I mean, that's a significant investment into your podcasting, but that's great.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really is. Okay. Good deal. When you first started out, um, and you said, "Hey, I'm going to be a podcaster now." Did you go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment? I mean, what'd you start with? What did you just use your phone?
So I'll tell you what, I had no idea what I was doing. I did.
Most of us
As
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say as most people. Uh, I did research. I talked to other friends who had podcasts. He's not that serious into it. but he would tell me, "Oh, you got to get this and you got to get this." And I was saying to myself, "Man, I want to do something that works best for me." Somebody said you had to get a camera, and I was thinking to myself, well, my cell phone has a 4K camera. Why do I need to buy a camera? I want to start as easy as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I did. I bought a bunch of equipment. I bought one of those things where you hook up to the camera and you have a microphone and you and a microphone and someone else and you talk. I wanted to do like in-person podcasts,
Mhm.
but what just worked better for me is having the Riverside app and inviting people via Riverside to tell them to download the app and we can use it. Um, so that's one of the things that's one of the mistakes that I made was trying to buy equipment. I bought like a microphone, a desk stand. I moved my kid out of a room so I can have it as an office slash studio. But yeah, those are some of the mistakes I made, and it's getting better now. You know, my
Cool.
podcasts are better. I had a friend of mine who's into music producing. He got me a intro song.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's all like AI generated, and you get rights to it and everything. So it's pretty cool. I love the second season. It's gonna come along better.
Okay.
I think that's the goal for everybody to get better and better as time goes along.
Of course. Absolutely. That sounds like you're making some pretty good improvements though.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. What do you do to promote your podcast to get it out there?
So I have social media.
Hmm?
I have, of course, the Facebook, the Instagram. I have TikTok, YouTube, the YouTube channel. I always post whenever I post something. I post it on a particular social media link, but I have all the links to all of them on there. And here's a good thing that a lot of people don't know. I have something called Adobe Express.
Hmm?
It's I think it's a $9 or $10 subscription a month. You're smiling because you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I do. You go ahead though,
Yeah,
because that's great. A lot
yeah,
of people don't know.
yeah. Adobe Express is about a $9 or $10 subscription a month. It comes right from Apple Pay or whatever you got.
Hmm.
You get on and you can put your information in there and they have all different types of layouts to include YouTube banners, Instagram reels, Facebook videos, whatever it is. And you can set your information up and you can schedule it to post a specific date, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it gives you suggestions too, based on what you should post about. Hey, post about a personal journey, or post about how somebody can do improvement. It has a lot of AI as everything nowadays does. Has a lot of
Right.
AI in
Yeah.
there that teaches you about that give you suggestions on what you should say to include like hashtags, and you can link your social media accounts to Adobe and schedule it to publish, or you don't even have to be around. You spend a Saturday morning, maybe 4 or 5 hours creating a post and creating some content set for a schedule, and then you can the rest of your week you can work.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a great tip. That's a great tip. I love that you brought that up. Too many people don't know that that's out there. And honestly, for a minimal monthly investment, it just makes social
Oh
media
yeah.
so much easier, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. Now I know you're getting into your second season, and sometimes it
Mhm.
takes people a little while to get to this, but have you had a chance to monetize the podcast or look into any of that stuff?
So no, not yet. I hadn't had a chance to monetize. I know that for Spotify you have to have so many episodes and so many viewers, and then the same thing for YouTube. You have to have so many episodes and so many viewers.
Sure.
Um, but I hadn't had a chance to monetize it yet. That's something I'm really looking forward to doing my second season.
Okay. And there's a lot of ways to monetize besides just the ad buy and the numbers
Mhm.
and all that stuff, you know. So get creative with it, man. I've been doing this a long time. And that's
Oh
one
yeah.
thing. Every time I talk to somebody about monetizing, it's one of the things I always tell them. Get as creative as you can possibly get because all it takes is one person to say yes or like the idea and give you some money to be named on the podcast. And the next thing you know, you're monetized.
Oh
You know what I mean?
nice.
So it's really it's a powerful product, and it sounds like you've got a pretty neat setup. So, and you don't seem like the kind of guy who's going to have trouble approaching somebody saying, "Hey, do you want to support my podcast?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I won't have trouble at all.
you're pretty forthright.
Oh yeah.
Man, that's nice. All right, um, man, you're just like ripping right through this. I'm getting the most efficient answers I've ever gotten from anybody.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me back up just for a second here. Um, As you head into season two, now I know you said most of your season one was interviews, right? Now, do you always do interview shows or do you do solo episodes also?
So I hadn't did a solo episode yet, and the reason
Really?
why I hadn't did a solo episode is because I like having those. I feel like two is better than one. All right. I hadn't had a solo episode. Of course, I have advice to give, but I hadn't had a solo episode because I like sitting down, having interview type questions with someone, asking them specific topics about leadership, and then getting their feedback on it. I can have a conversation with you and I can tell you, oh, well, the best leaders are people names that start with the letter T. I can say that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And if we're having a conversation, you can say to me, well, I had a guy whose name started with S, and he was also a great leader. Then it makes me think like, maybe T's are not the best. Maybe guys whose names start with T are not the best leader. Of course, that's just an example. But the gist of it is when you have more than one person talking about different leadership styles, uh, actions, how they get things done, it makes for a better conversation. You get to see two different point of views.
Sure.
I don't always have to agree with my guest or vice versa.
Nice. And you said most of those guests from season one were military.
Yeah, either prior service or still in the military.
Okay. So is that how you're going to continue season two with the same type of thing, or are you going to bring on different types of guests?
So you know what? I would love to have more guests from different industries. I know I have an episode lined up with a doctor
Hmm.
who lives in this area. I have an episode lined up with a professor who is a professor at the local college. I also have an interview lined up with a guy who is a business owner. And there's one episode that I'm looking forward to. Her name is Jody Daniels. She used to be the uh, commanding general for the United States Army Reserves, like the entire Army Reserve.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I'm really excited about that one. I'm excited for all my interviews just to talk about it, but that one is just like, really exciting to me.
Nice. Very nice. Are you considering trying a solo episode at all, or is that just one of those not going to happen on the podcast?
Maybe in the future, maybe
Huh?
in the future I will. Maybe it's one of those things where it's not about the confidence for me, but it's just about, whether or not I have something super interesting to say on my own.
Right.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
mean, I think I'm
100%.
interesting, but you know,
Well, you are. Leadership is a topic, that you can talk about, you can take all kinds of different viewpoints on, and so on. So I imagine you can go a lot of different ways with that.
oh yeah.
So very, very cool. Now, have you already recorded season two and you're just releasing it out, or are you in the process of making the recordings and then putting it on?
So I'm in the process of making the recordings. As I mentioned earlier, I record through an app called Riverside.
Right?
What I do in Riverside is I go in and I'll, of course, I'll reach out to someone via email and ask them, hey, are you interested in, you know, being a guest on the podcast? If the answer is yes, I go into the Riverside app and I'll schedule a interview date with him, and it has a link and everything. It sends a link to him. Once they get the link, we sit down and I sit down and I'll come up with questions that I will ask them, and I will shoot them an email or a text message to let them know, hey, I'm going to ask these questions. I normally record one day, and then the very next day, inside the Riverside studio, editing, taking out, clutch words, pauses, silence, killing background noise, things like that. So it's a very involved, detailed process where I record and then I edit and then I publish.
Nice. Nice. And you're doing all the work yourself at this point, right? You haven't hired any of this out, right?
Nope, solo person, all by myself.
He's smiling, going, nope, nope, it's all me.
Yeah. You know
So,
how it is when you first start, you're doing everything on your own. And as it grows, and I'm gonna take some advice from anyone else who's listening about monetizing as it grows. Um, my goal wasn't to get rich off the podcast. It was just to, talk about something that I like talking about. Now, if I make money in the process, then that's always a plus. But my true passion is just talking about leadership. So,
nice.
but yeah, for right now, it's just me.
Okay, got it. All right, let me give you my my corny question that I warned you about before. All right.
Yeah,
I always get
yeah.
good answers to this though. So, all right, here we go. As you do your podcast, as you're talking about leadership and you're interviewing these people and everything, and you've launched, you're on your second season now. What is the thing about doing this podcast thing that you're doing that you love the most? And what is the thing that you just hate the most?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I'll start with what I love the most. What I love the most about doing the podcast is having those conversations with people, right? Like I am a people person. You talk to people, you have information with them. I mean, you pass information back and forth, and you learn something new every time. I do consider myself a lifelong learner. So when someone has a conversation with me about leadership, something that I'm very passionate about, uh, it's one of the things that I love. One of my teaching partners this past episode, a couple episodes ago, he hit me with a quote, and it's something that I use all the time. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the quote was, "Society grows old," or something like that, when men plant trees in which shade they'll never sit, right? So it's
Hmm.
essentially saying that, you know, it's essentially asking the question of what are you doing now that's going to help things for the future generation, not just from the army standpoint, but like as a father, what are you doing as a father to help your son, to help your daughter, to sit down and say to yourself, I'm planting trees and I'll never enjoy the shade, but the tree isn't for me, it's for my kids and my kids' kids. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So things like that, that quote, those are what I love the most. Now, what I don't like is the flaky ones, right? I don't like the flaky podcast, the podcast guest. They're just like, oh, I want to do it, but I don't have time. Or someone who says, oh, I don't feel like I have anything to talk about. Or someone who's extremely nervous, right? And these are people that I've known for like years. And I have to like pause the video and say, hey, why are you so nervous? Hey, just relax, calm down, it's fine. But that's one of the things that I want to say that it don't want to be not necessarily dislike, but it's one of the things that I real cringe for, like don't flake. Just come on. We're gonna talk about leadership. Nobody's saying that you have to be the best leader, but
I understand. I understand completely. All right. I usually kind of round out with this question, but I'm going to give you the opportunity maybe to give me two answers. It's up to you. Okay.
gotcha.
I always ask somebody for, you know, what advice would they give? And usually we're talking about podcasters. So, because of what you do, I'd love to get two answers out of you if you have them. And I'm putting you on the spot.
Hmm.
I realize that because I didn't prep you for this or anything. But
That's okay.
I'd love to get one answer of what's a good piece of advice for podcasters based on maybe something you've learned, doing a couple of seasons now. And then what is a good piece of advice that you think that people should all know about leadership?
Got it. Let's see. Advice about podcasting. I will say, don't wait to get started, right? Uh, you know, if you're waiting until everything is perfect to get started, then you'll never start because nothing is ever perfect, right? I think in life you go through things and you have challenges, but without resistance, there's no growth.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you have
Yeah.
to make sure that you just, commit to it, start, get your equipment, and ask for feedback as well, from seasoned podcasters. Don't be afraid, man. Just put it out there. Get yourself started.
Nice. Good one. How about leadership?
Ooh, I got so many leadership things. I'll get you one. My wife, who was, like I said, also was in the military. Usually when you're leaving the duty station, they get you something. called a PCS award. PCS stands for Permanent Change of Station. It means when you go from one place to the other. And my wife got me uh, this plaque, and on the back of the plaque there was a quote by this guy called George F. Will. I believe that's his name. And the quote said that knowledge is not particularly dependent on uh, what you know, right? You're not going to know everything about the universe. So it's not important to know how the stars were made. It's not important to know how the grass grows. It's not important to know, you know, how the engine works. That's not important. What's really important in life is for you to want to know. You understand what I'm saying?
I sure do. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very
I can
subtle.
say, yeah, yeah. So I can say things to you like, oh, well, this is a computer monitor. But if you want to know how it's worked, then it'll feed your enthusiasm to learn more about a specific thing.
Yeah. Want to
So it's
know.
not in, yeah, so it's not important to know everything. It's important to want to know.
Nice. I appreciate that. I love it. I love it. And
For
you
sure.
just stepped right up. I didn't give you any prep for that at all. I totally sandbagged you with that question. You just looked at me like,
It's all
all right, I got this.
it's all good.
I appreciate it. All right. So season two is out now. Podcast is rocking and rolling. Are you still looking for people to interview? I mean, do you want people to
Mo-
contact you for that, or are you already full in your interviews for season two?
Yeah, man. I'm still looking for people to interview. It doesn't matter what industry, what field you're in. A lot of people feel like they are not leaders. If you're in an organization and you look out for the people to the left and right of you, you are absolutely a leader. Doesn't
Okay.
matter what your statue is, whether or not you're a supervisor or you're this high-ranking officer or non-commissioned officer in the military. I'm just looking for interesting people to interview.
Great. So if somebody wants to contact you, the best way is
Shoot me an email. The email is theleadershipconversation@gmail.com. No spaces, no hyphen. It's just theleadershipconversation@gmail.com.
awesome. All right. I'll make sure that's in the show notes for everybody, of course. But yeah, so folks, hey, if you're interested and you want to talk leadership with someone who obviously knows what they're talking about, contact Derrick at the Leadership Conversation podcast or just conversation.
The Leadership Conversation.
Conversation. The Leadership Conversation at gmail.com. I drew the
That's it.
wrong line on my pad over here. I wanted to make sure I had that correct before I put in the show notes wrong. All
Cool.
right, excellent. That's beautiful. Derrick, thank you so much for joining us today, telling us about your podcast, giving us a little bit of a glimpse of you and your life. It was a real pleasure having you on, man. It was great meeting you.
For sure, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, you've had another great episode of The Podcaster Nation. This is the podcast that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. This is the place where we all come together, where we all lift each other up. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing. Until next time.